You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, Side Notes edition. We are discussing our own pitches for movies on this particular episode of Side Notes. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver.
And we are joined by now just a regular guest of the show. I said this to Olaf last week, and I'm saying you're just now on the rotation. Friend of the show, regular guest, the game master of Quantum Kickflip right here on the Alberta Podcast Network. One of the members of the Debutante Sketch Comedy Group. Back in making new music, band member of Success 5000. Check them out. They've got new stuff. It's Robyn Slack is here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thrilled to be back. As always, delighted to be asked to be on the show.
Yeah, when I pitched you this, hey, let's do pitches premise, I was like, hey, I got a pitch for you. You want to pitch movies, and you can say no, because really I'm asking for all your best ideas for free for nothing.
And I was so excited for this because while yes, I do have ideas that it's like, I don't really want to give that away on a podcast. I'd love to actually get a chance to make that someday. I also have ideas that no one will ever let me make. And there's no universe in which I ever am in a position to make these movies. So I'm so stoked that these things that have been rattling around in my brain can finally serve a purpose other than just rattling around in my brain.
Yeah. The pitches that I have are sort of the very high budget variety that would I will never be in that position to be able to make such a thing.
At least one of my pitches is I want this director to make this movie, so I'm definitely not going to be the one making it.
So yeah, that is the premise of this episode. We're going to just pitch to each other and then elaborate on those pitches, and obviously to you, our listeners. We've got some pitches from our listeners in at the end. Just spitball some ideas for cool movies. So let's say we get right into it. Who wants to go first? We didn't decide. Who's got the...
I feel like our guest should have the opportunity to pitch first.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Or if you...
Yeah, no, I'm into it.
It's your call. Please.
Yeah. So, mine, all of the ideas that I have come up with are generally things that, like I say, I will never be in a position to make this movie. Generally because they're, licensed properties that I don't have the rights to. And so I tossed around a few different ones. I had a strong pitch going for, canonical sequel to the 90s Super Mario Brothers live-action movie. I think now's the time. Leguizamo's hot off of Encanto. It's like, if we were ever going to make it, oh boy. Bob Hoskins sadly not with us anymore, so that kind of complicated that. Anyway, where I have landed here for my first pitch. Y'all grew up with Animorphs?
Yes.
Familiar with, but never actually read them.
Familiar with? Okay.
I remember the name, and that's just about it. So you might have to give me
I might have to give you some Cliff's Notes. Cool. Liam, what do you remember about
Pride of the Scholastic Book Fair. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, what do you remember about the broad concept of Animorphs?
It's like kids turn into animals and fight aliens, right?
That's absolutely it. Yeah, it's a secret alien invasion going on. These alien slugs are taking over people's brains. You can't tell who's an alien, who's not, because they got slugs in their brains. But these kids are given superpowers by a dying good alien. There's good aliens and bad aliens. There's a lot of lore in this. They can turn into animals. They got to fight the alien invasion. That's the broad premise. Mostly people remember the covers where it's like a picture of a kid slowly turning stage by stage into an animal. And if you flip the pages at the bottom of the book, there's an animated flip book of a kid turning into a dog or a hawk or whatever it is in that particular book. And as Liam said, Pride of the Scholastic Book Fair, there's maybe 50 something of them, mostly ghost written by other people.
Greg, did you just Google the covers?
They're so good.
They're fantastic. The best part of the Animorphs. So I have a pitch for finally bringing the Animorphs to the big screen. They briefly had a YTV cartoon that was I think a Canadian production. It had the guy who played Iceman in the X-Men movie in it. and that is the only recognizable actor in the property. We're scrapping that because this is not. My pitch here is I feel like a lot of these properties are pitched to... They take an old thing from our childhood and try and pitch it to modern kids. And that's a mistake, because modern kids do not give a shit about Animorphs. No one cares. And winning them over on Animorphs is like the name recognition that you're trying to cash in on is not going to work. I say don't name
why
this
would
movie
they even make why would they even make a Power Rangers movie, you know?
Exactly, yeah. It's like you have to first introduce kids to like what Power Rangers are. And this is even more obscure. So you don't aim it at kids at all. You aim it at adults who have nostalgia for this. So my pitch here is a dark comedy about the aftermath of a YA story. What happens when the teenage superheroes grow up and are middle-aged wash-ups who have been coasting on their teen superhero fame.
So the alien invasion is over, the brain slugs have been defeated, and now it's just a bunch of washed-up, middle-aged people dealing with the fact that they can turn into animals and save the world.
They can still turn into animals, and they are world-famous for having prevented an alien invasion. I'm thinking a tone around like something along the lines of The Righteous Gemstones, where it's like kind of an irreverent, satirical, dark comedy thing. And I also, my chosen casting for it overlaps a lot with something like Righteous Gemstones. That's kind of the broad pitch is it's a story about the grown-up Animorphs. So basically the books are both entirely canon, but also entirely not featured in the movie whatsoever. It's just all this complicated lore. And they also happened in real time back in the 90s when these books were coming out. And our movie is set today in real time also. From there...
How dark are we talking when we're saying dark comedy? Are we talking about like The Boys level of darkness, or are we talking about maybe a little bit lighter?
One of the plot points from the books is that I believe in the final book, one of the 5 main kids, because it's 5 main kids and an alien who hangs out with them, and one of these 5 main kids dies in the final book. And I like keeping that canonical, but I also love the idea of all of these characters. If you're going to make an Animorphs movie, it feels weird to just not have one of them in it. That same character, Rachel, is a girl who at one point is able to turn into a starfish and like gets a limb cut off and becomes 2 Rachels. There's a whole book dealing with that. So in my movie, this character is canonically dead. But also still there, but they call her Starfish Rachel, and everyone hates her because she's not the real Rachel, and she just reminds them of their dead friend, who's not around anymore.
Well, now, I just curious, how do you save the world by turning into a starfish?
That one was one of the less useful animal forms, I think.
I would think so. I also didn't know that was a power that starfish had, that they could get a limb cut off and then just become a second starfish. Is that like...
I think there's some basis. I don't know how like 1-to-1 it is, but like the idea is if you cut a limb off a starfish, it will regrow into a second starfish. And they extrapolated from there and were like, well, she got a limb, now there's 2
and
of
she
her
has
when
starfish
they
powers.
unmorph.
That's the power she has.
That's great. I
want to get into cast here because that's the selling point here.
So before we go a little bit further, I do want to just this is reminding me of the book, and then there was like a CW movie made out of it called The Magicians.
Okay,
it's quite good. I feel like maybe trying to strike that kind of a tone, but a comedy where it's like just sort of like cynical Harry Potter for adults. I recommend The Magicians. It's just what that's making me think of. Sorry, go on.
That sounds dope. I wish I'd seen it so I could be like, yes, that's the tone.
Yeah, that's why I'm not making a big deal about it, but that's...
Hey, I brought Animorphs to a podcast
that
is not super familiar with Animorphs, so whatever. We're all making obscure references here.
But hang on. Just before you get into casting, I had an idea around this starfish character. So
yes.
So what if you've got like it's a quartet of or 6, what's a 5-tet? 5-tet? Quintet, there you go. So they're all washed up, and like maybe this the starfish character is like sort of like ends up being the kind of like the villain because she was like somewhat hated, right? So what she starts doing is like cutting off limbs and just like duplicating herself, and like the that she does that,
very good.
the more she becomes like more powerful because there's more of her, and it eventually, like, then they realize that like they have to stop this person because she's about to take over the world with her starfish powers.
I actually
that's fantastic.
I had considered something similar, but from the other end, they keep chopping off her limbs, hoping that the next version of her will be one they can like.
Oh, that's also very good. The other main plot that if you're a kid who grew up with these books and read like 3 of them and then fell off of it, the thing you remember is that one of the 5 kids, they have a limit on how long they can be an animal. They can get like 2 hours-ish as any animal, and if they go past that, they're stuck as that animal forever. That's where all the stakes in the book come from, is like, you're sneaking into the place as a rat, but like you gotta get out of there or else you're stuck as a rat forever. And one kid in the first book gets stuck as a hawk and is a hawk for the remaining 50 books. He gets his changing, shape-shifting powers back at some point, but still stays a hawk. It's a whole thing. So we're carrying that forward too. One of these characters is just a hawk.
One of the characters should have gotten so fed up with how crummy the world is that they decided to just turn into an animal and never turn back.
Just never come back.
Yeah. There should be a plot point where they have to seek out this person who decided, you know what, I'm just better off as a rat. I'm just going to be a rat. It's so much easier.
Oh, that'd be Tobias. That'd be the hawk for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I do love the idea of like a hawk that is just like given up on life, just laying back in his dirty apartment with his big old beer gut, smoking cigarettes. Like, yeah, I used to be something.
Oh, very good. So yeah, like I don't have a ton of details worked out. I just liked the idea of the broad concept of like, you take a existing YA property and explore what does that look like in their middle age period. If we're looking for set pieces and plot for later on, I figured, you know, there's a new alien invasion. The whole world is like, hey, Animorphs, you did it once. You're the people we call for this sort of thing. And we have a nice like getting the band back together style story. I also love the idea that maybe there's a new team of teenage superheroes that like rises to the challenge that the old Animorphs are like threatened by and jealous of, and we get to explore some themes of like, you know, getting older and feeling like you're being replaced by the younger generation.
I love that.
And then maybe the younger kids, you know, it turns out that they're being controlled by the brain slugs, and it's all part of it. And so the old Animorphs have to come in and save the day, because only they know that these new teen superheroes are not what they seem. Anyway, casting is my strong pitch here. So for the main kid, Jake, he's just like, in the books, he's nothing. He's a very bland, like down the middle kind of a character. He's your blank slate protagonist. I want to make him a little more interesting if this is going to be a comedy. So I'm picturing either a Danny McBride, an H. John Benjamin, or a Tim Robinson from I Think You Can Leave. That's our lead. His best buddy,
that definitely sets a tone for sure.
Yeah.
Best buddy Marco, the kind of wisecracking kid. He's portrayed as Latino in the books. My money's on John Leguizamo. Anytime I can put John Leguizamo in something, I feel like it's a crime if you don't. But I also think it could be very fun to go the opposite direction, since he was the wisecracking kid. Cast him with like Javier Bardem or Danny Trejo, and just like the horrors of war have completely just like turned him into it. It's like aged him up more than the rest of them, and he no longer has the high spirits. For Starfish Girl, Rachel, I love Edie Patterson on Righteous Gemstones. I could also see like a Kristen Schaal or a Vanessa Bayer, just like an awkward lady. I don't know how else to describe that character archetype. For your Hawk, I mean, it's going to be a voice, I guess, because the Hawk is going to be a CG Hawk. I'd like a Michael Cera for that. I think he could capture the haunted personality there. I feel like these get less funny as they go on, because the fifth girl is just like the other girl who's also on the team, who also didn't have a ton of personality. She was like the heart of the team, like the nice one. I like Nicole Byer or Danielle Brooks from Orange is the New Black, just like a very like over the top, exuberant kind of a female. I think she's a love interest in the book as well, but they could be maybe they're divorced at this point because we're exploring middle age. And then for the alien, I want Titus Burgess from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And I will not negotiate on this.
Correct. That is the correct casting choice.
Incredible.
That's my middle-aged Animorphs movie.
I like that a lot, and I like comparing it to Righteous Gemstones, because then it's not... There can be little bursts of action, but maybe it isn't about an alien invasion. Like, it really is like a fairly grounded, sort of absurd drama.
Well, and the nice thing is, like, the alien invasion is a secret invasion thing, right? Like, it's brain slugs that you can't see. So it could be that there's this new invasion that they think they're saving the world from is entirely in their heads. Like, they're middle-aged and irrelevant, and they miss their glory days, so they just decide that, like... Or they see some evidence of, like, the alien Yerks are back, we need to fight them. But it's absolutely not, and they're just embarrassing themselves.
Or maybe one of them's hung up on that. Like, one of them is completely riddled with... The Danny Trejo character is, like, completely riddled with paranoia.
They could be back at any time. Maybe they never left. They're just waiting, biding their time.
That's why I don't joke anymore.
Sweet, that's what I brought to the table.
Yeah, it makes me think of like the way that they remake some of the old like TV sitcoms and TV shows and stuff like that from the 70s and 80s, where like if you're gonna remake like a Dukes of Hazzard or something like that, like you don't take the material seriously, you just turn it into something that's more of like a slapstick and have fun with it. Same with like I did think they did it with like Starsky and Hutch.
There's a whole run of those where it was like Dukes of Hazzard, Starsky and Hutch, Get Smart, though that was kind of already a comedy, but like just like taking these old action TV shows and putting modern comedians in them.
The other thing that occurred to me was like the Cartoon Network, like Harvey Birdman and shows like that, Space Ghost, where they take like a cartoon character that was aimed at kids in the 70s and make it an irreverent comedy for adults in the early 2000s or whatever. I feel like Galaxy Quest would be a good tonal reference point. I think that's about where we'd want it to sit, where it's like... You've got these past their prime actors who played heroes back in the day. I feel like there would be a lot of overlap with something like Galaxy Quest.
Sweet. Yeah, that's a good.
But no Tim Allen in this. Fuck Tim Allen forever.
As obscure properties go, it was also making me think of like remaking something like Captain Power, which is like a show that ran for like 4 episodes or 5 episodes and crashed and burned because it ran out of money, because it was like trying to do computer animated characters in a time when like that was super expensive and very difficult to do. But it's like it was so short lived, but like every person my age can remember that from their childhood.
I think I still have
short run thing.
I think I still have one of the toys.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a market for those nostalgic reboots, and it's going to be interesting watching, as we all get older, stuff that's like no longer relevant for us. Like the big Danny Phantom reboot's going to really mean something to someone.
Yeah, and that will completely go over my head, yeah.
Well, there was a Dora the Explorer movie, wasn't there?
Yeah. And they're currently doing something with Fairly Odd Parents, and that I like got an ad for it and was like, I am not I've aged out of your target demo for this. I don't know.
I'm now too old for nostalgia.
For nostalgic reboots, it's depressing.
I'm too old for the 20-year nostalgia cycle.
Anyway,
we got our Power Rangers movie. Shut up.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Who wants to go next? Mine has aliens in it, so unless we all have aliens in, I'll buffer.
Mine technically has aliens in it.
All right,
Greg,
I'll
yours
go.
is aliens, doesn't it?
Mine is space based, but it does not have aliens in it unless we make some serious changes to it. So the very short elevator pitch for my movie is the death of Jeff Bezos, and it's surrounded around the ridiculousness of the race to Mars amongst all these billionaires. But what I really have been rolling around my head for a while is how to make a movie that would be a commentary on all that. And some of the things that I sort of landed on would be, a space voyage to Mars that goes horribly wrong, where this Jeff Bezos type billionaire has created this big yacht in space, and his plan is to bring himself and a bunch of engineers and astronauts, as well as people who paid to get off Earth, because Earth isn't a good place anymore. It's been destroyed by billionaires, so they've decided that they're going to get the hell out of Dodge. And the thrust of the film is them going on board this sort of space yacht, and then realizing the horrors of space travel. Thinking of the things like they talk about in the International Space Station. I'm like, it's really loud. It's loud because you have all these machines working to keep humans alive. It's uncomfortable. It's cramped. So you've got all of these these people who've paid lots of money to get off of Earth, and then it's slowly dawning on them the realities of what space travel is actually like. And there's you start to build sort of animosity towards this person who convinced you to get on board. And it could be a kind of like an adventure that goes awry, where there's something goes wrong with the ship, and suddenly the trained astronauts have all died in an accident, and then these people have to try and find a way of landing on Mars themselves with only the skills of the kind of everymans that were left over, that they kind of hired, the people that weren't necessarily astronauts, but were sort of brought on as people who are there to grow food and things like that once they actually do get to Mars or something like that. Either that, or it could just be a space mutiny type of thing, where it's just as everyone realizes what a horrible journey, horrible life they're expected to lead once they actually land on Mars, they all turn on the billionaire, which could be fun in its own right to get the sort of this comeuppance.
Yeah, to sort of have a weird sort of Michael Scott character who's thinks he's really everyone's hero, and slowly people are starting to resent and hate him for the position.
Yeah, he's just really convinced that this is the way to go, and he doesn't see it himself. He's so far up his own ass that he doesn't really understand how the nature of space travel either. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I want to build around.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't want to completely be the other thing you could do, but it's just where I thought you were going when you started this, when you said the death of Jeff Bezos and him going into space, was this is what I thought you were going to pitch. And what I like this idea, he dies in space, and then it follows a lot of the same beats as the movie Death of Stalin.
Oh yeah,
everyone's jockeying for position. Oh fuck, he died while orbiting Earth.
To be the chair of Amazon,
the chairman, and it's this power scramble amongst Amazon top people to replace him. But yours has much more of a a long game, I think, the descent into madness, and that it actually weirdly reminds me a little bit. We were talking about this before we started recording, but the first half of the season of Our Flag Means Death, where it's this just completely delusional weirdo buys a vessel and heads out into the unknown with people who are only there reluctantly.
Yeah.
And is fairly clueless to the ways of the world.
The other way I was thinking about coming at it is the at first the billionaire type does seem to be some sort of altruistic guy. And I think that actually makes a little bit more sense for what I want to do, because he's sort of the audience sort of thinks that he's this altruistic billionaire who's trying to do his very best to save humanity from itself or whatever. And that you kind of learn that he's full of shit through the people that he's brought aboard as things start to collapse around them, kind of thing. So yeah, I just think it's just I was trying to think of something that would be a commentary on just the sort of class struggle that we're dealing with, and the ridiculousness of a billionaire thinking that space travel at this point is the right way to go instead of trying to fix things on Earth, right?
Absolutely. I don't feel like necessarily casting is a key part of every pitch. Like, I feel like you can just pitch the movie, but I am curious if you like, do you have someone envisioned for the lead?
No, I don't really. Yeah, I don't really tend to think about those kinds of things. But like, I don't know.
Ben Stiller.
What's that?
Who?
Ben Stiller. No, I'm serious. Well, he's got that like quiet intensity that he can pull off in a lot of his comedic roles. I'm thinking of like his character in like Heavyweights, who's like the rich fitness guru who goes off the deep end. Like, I think he would be very funny in that role, honestly.
Yeah, I'd see that.
I'd buy that. I started thinking Steve Carell, not just for the Michael Scott reference, but a lot of people didn't like it. I don't dislike Space Force, and this even has some of the tones of Space Force, of like a deeply unqualified guy being in charge of space missions. And so the more you describe this, the more I'm seeing Steve Carell as the delusional visionary.
What about like a Matt Damon type? Because he's kind of like a quasi villain in that latest Ridley Scott movie. What's it called again? The Duel.
Yeah.
Last Duel. Yeah.
The Last Duel, and which is, I really like that movie, by the way. But yeah, like I haven't seen him as be like a villain before, and I think that would be somewhat interesting.
Plus, it would continue his the memification of his career of him once again being lost in space. So.
Yeah.
It's another in the interstellar Martian journey that he's been on. Yeah.
What about Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Birdman and how he's just like this like intense weirdo in Birdman.
Well, I just recently watched RoboCop with you guys, and he's the tech billionaire villain in that, right?
Oh, right. Wild! He's like the Kurtwood Smith from the. I haven't seen the RoboCop reboot. I've only seen the original.
He's not the Kurtwood Smith. He's not,
because I was the drug dealer. Yeah,
the drug dealer. He's the corporate guy. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay,
him and another actor. Moving on.
All right, let me hit you guys with this. How about Tilda Swinton?
I love it.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Instantly, yes, 100%.
Yeah, they follow Space Mommy into space.
Yeah,
yeah, huge.
I would buy Tilda Swinton as Jeff Bezos. Like I would even. She's got the range. I could see it. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think I'll hit us with the next one then, because I'm gonna. Mine also is space and alien related.
Oh, good. We're all going to be space and alien related. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Who would have thought? A bunch of science fiction nerds pitch space movies. So mine is based on the very first sketch that I wrote for the sketch group that Robyn and I are part of, the Debutantes.
I know which one I'm thinking of. Yeah. I'm thinking of the right one. It never really
worked as a sketch, but the more I think about it, it actually might be better as a movie. It's I don't have a working title for it, but it's essentially like E.T. meets Basic Instinct, or The Iron Giant meets Fatal Attraction. Where
where this is going.
So you could play it as a straight family comedy, or you could play it as a more mature comedy with the pastiche of a Harry and the Hendersons. But nevertheless, you got two POV characters, a little kid, and the alien that the kid found in the woods recently, like E.T. He's currently keeping the alien hidden from his family, or at least the powers that be. Maybe the family's helping him. These are things we can explore. But he's this little kid, alien, best friend, big Lilo and Stitch energy. They're living their best life. That's how the movie starts, as is inside of that trope, right? The inciting incident is that the kid goes into the woods another day and finds like a weird robot companion, like an Iron Giant or a Johnny Five, brings it home, and the alien gets incredibly jealous that this kid has a different second weird best friend that he found in the woods. And we begin, that's where the Basic Instinct, the Fatal Attraction thing comes in. It's really just the beats of Toy Story if Andy could talk to the toys.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So the first half of the movie is the alien trying to, like, get rid of the robot, right? Trying to different plans and ploys to get him out. Eventually gets desperate. He's like, I'm just gonna have to reveal him. I'm just gonna have to expose this creature, this robot, get him kicked out.
Accidentally exposes himself.
Yep. Well, actually, it exposes all three of them.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah,
they all get. And also finds out that that robot is being designed as part of a tool, part of a bigger mission to capture aliens that the humans know are, like, human authorities know are on Earth. So, it's the sign that his days on Earth are numbered. Is also adds some to the stakes. But yes, all of this subterfuge and trying to get the alien or the robot revealed, gets all three of them caught, and then the final act is the alien and the robot have to team up and work together
to get their kid
Woody
friends
and Buzz style to save the kid.
Yeah, I like it.
So you get to have some fun with there's always the scene of the Halloween thing in ET, like they're trying to hide the critter, but it's like the kid's now trying to hide two weird friends, but one of them is trying to reveal the other one. So it just adds layers to that trope. Yeah, that's thoughts.
I love it. I don't totally remember this sketch. This must have been early days of our sketch troupe, because I thought I knew the sketch you were referencing, and then you had to do it. It was like, oh yeah, I have a vague memory of this, but.
Oh, I'm curious after which one you thought it was, but no, in the sketch, the premise was just those were my Spider-Man stickers. You were gonna stick them on me. It was just jealous girlfriend jokes, essentially.
Okay.
And then it never really ended anywhere, which is probably why we never did it or used it.
I thought you were alluding to the sketch where the space mission finds alien life for the first time, and the one astronaut immediately wants to eat it. And it's like, that's what we're doing here, right? I thought that's why we came to the moon. We want to find an alien and cook it.
I'm amused that you had. Surprise. I'm amused that you had a sketch idea that, in hindsight, you were like, "Oh, that's actually better as a full-blown story," because that actually happened to me, and I got nominated for an award for the script that came out of it. So,
fantastic,
cool.
Stupid sketch idea turned into a pretty good play. Actually, is basically the moral of my story.
I like parodying sort of the weird friend thing, where in a sense of just continually adding more friends. So he keeps they keep finding another one, or the other friends are like, oh, come on, really? Another guy? You found another guy in the woods?
Bit throughout the movie that as they're trying to escape the government, they find yet another one, and they're like, we don't have time for you. You're going to have to stay in the
woods. Look, I know you're a caveman that we thought of.
Look, I don't have time.
The ghost of someone? No, we get it.
You know what? I do not have time for psychic little girls. Go away.
Because initially my thought was oh man, what are the odds of one kid finding two? And then I was like, what are the odds of one kid finding one alien? If you're already at that level of improbability, why does it matter that he then finds the second one? Especially then, as you go on in the plot, you reveal that, the robot is designed to hunt aliens. So, it's not implausible that maybe part of the reason they're both gravitated to this kid is that the robot was, locked onto the energy signature or whatever. You kind of justify your own premise, which I like.
Yeah, he lives near the military base, Iron Giant style. Yeah. So, do you think this would work better as as an earnest family comedy with this updated, sort of self-referential play on the trope, or do you play it more mature joke and we're is almost again trying to tap into the nostalgia for Harry and the Henderson type movies?
You know what? There's a niche right now for a good family comedy, and I think that could fill that niche. We haven't had an E.T. or something like that in a long time, or a Harry and the Hendersons, and I think that nails it. That is right in that slot.
I would agree with that. That I don't think you need to go adult raunchy self-referential comedy. I think it's got to be a little bit self-aware, because you are just you're subverting the trope so hard that but something in a Mitchell's versus the Machines was the thing that popped to mind of oh, it's a family comedy that also is kind of aware of its own tropes, and I feel something like that could be a sweet spot for it.
I could even see it as an animated feature, like Mitchell's versus the Machines, for the record,
or Iron Giant, even
like Iron Giant, Lilo and Stitch,
Actually, yeah. Oh man, that's the more I think about it. It's a cartoon. I think it's an animated feature.
Pixar, we know you listen.
Mm-hmm.
Give Liam a call.
It's funny that I was just thinking, like, there isn't really a lot of those the live action found friend.
They're just kind of more sleeper hits. Like I watched Okja recently, and Okja is this essentially.
Okay.
The issue with animating it is you are going to have to give Chris Pratt a voice role, because that's the law now.
It's a me, a Chris Pratt.
I guess Chris Pratt is the alien.
I don't know. Ben Schwartz is probably I haven't seen either of the Sonic movies, but one of the best parts of the Sonic movies, getting him to do the alien might not be the worst idea.
Yeah.
Or an Andy Samberg.
I'm so stoked for that Rescue Rangers movie. I don't know if you guys saw the trailer.
It looks bizarre.
Yeah. I was like,
on the other end of the spectrum on that one.
I did not know that I didn't want this movie is what I said.
It's funny, those little things that hit your nostalgia buttons, that I was like, yes please, I will bite on that. You got me.
That answers my question, because I feel like I watched it and was like, who is this for? And now I know it's for Liam.
I was just trying to figure out the lore. The lore of it was like breaking my brain a little bit. Like they're the Rescue Rangers, but also it's sort of like a Roger Rabbit universe. And like, were they a cartoon, or were they actually like people? Like, did they actually rescue people? I didn't get it.
I think they're going big Roger Rabbit rules. They're really trying to like remake Roger Rabbit. Like,
okay.
So
the Seth Rogen bit got a chuckle out of me. I'll give it that.
Scott, what do you got for a pitch?
I want to talk about Star Wars.
We were talking about Rescue Rangers for the rest of the podcast.
I want to talk about Star Wars.
Always.
Oh boy.
Yeah, because my pitch, much like Robyn's off the top, involves IP that I will never be allowed within 1,000 yards of. And
I almost came with a Star Wars pitch too, not gonna lie.
I heard that. But mine is a straight Star Wars pitch, and it's a movie that I badly want to see, and it is my pitch for a Lando Calrissian movie.
Ooh, very good.
Specifically, the framing device is that you've got Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian sitting at a sabacc table, regaling a group of aliens with one of his adventures. And it keeps flashing back to Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian having the adventure. And the joke is that the story Lando is narrating is not exactly the story that's playing out, because he's pumping his own tires, basically. So he'll be like, they welcomed me warmly, and then smash cut to Donald Glover like running away from people throwing spears at him or something. Like, so you could derive a lot of humor from that discontinuity between the reality and the story that's being told. And I would just love to see the two of them both playing Lando Calrissian in a movie, which is why I badly want this movie to be a thing. Disney, make this movie.
Because they were gonna make a Lando show at one point, like he was gonna get the Disney Plus treatment. And I don't know if that's still on the table or not, because they've basically just given up, they've thrown up their hands on Star Wars after Episode 9 and been like, I don't know. I guess it's TV shows now. But yeah,
that's probably for the best.
That was gonna be a thing. I feel like this would be the approach to take if you were gonna do it, though.
Yeah, and I mean, you could definitely do it as a series, no question. But this is my movie pitch for a
I think it's better as a movie. If you like the way you're pitching it, Scott, might work better as a movie, because it's just like they're sitting around the sabacc table and someone's like, "Hey Lando, how'd you get that scar?" or something. Like he's like, "Oh, you want to hear the story about how I got this? A weird piece of jewelry or a scar or a different ship or something." And then we hear that story.
And then he like mind harps of Sharu or something. Yeah. And his telling of the story makes him much more heroic than the reality, I think is part of the inherent joke of having Lando tell the story, honestly. And again, I think it would just be fun to have both of the actors who've played Lando playing Lando in the same movie, just at two different points in his life.
Can I layer a joke on? Because one of my least favorite things about Solo was that it felt the need to explain and justify all of these elements of Han Solo that, like, I didn't need to know that he got his blaster from a guy one time, or that he got his name at a thing. And so I like the idea if he's at the sabacc table And it's not other players asking him, it's that he keeps insisting, like, you guys, did I ever tell you the story of how I got this cool ring? And they're like, Lando, we don't care. We don't want to know.
We're here to play
very
cards.
Interesting. You've always seen me wearing this ring, and I bet you wondered where I got it. And they're like, no.
What about these dice? Do you want to know where I got these dice?
God damn it, Lando, no. We don't care.
But
and then he tells the story anyway.
You could thread the needle by having him tell a story they want him to tell them, but he keeps derailing it by explaining some like lore minutia that they don't want to know about.
That's how I got the dice. And they're like, this wasn't about the dice. We didn't care about the dice.
No, I'm getting to the part you want to hear. Hold on.
That would be so good if the narratives actually kind of like, after a while, he sort of like wove into like real. So he's explaining like these little things, but there's actually like this kind of awesome story that's going on in the background of how he got all these little trinkets and shit like that. I love that.
So here's who I want to direct it. As you're describing this, I'm like, why does this sound like familiar? This sounds like I've seen this. It's reminding me a lot of the narration over Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Okay.
It's a Guy Ritchie movie.
Get Guy Ritchie to make it. And it's got that like kind of gangster hustle, like there's fucking special songs playing in the background. It's kind of got that like, you know.
And you know what? That's fair
by
because
way
Lando...
of Figger and Dan in the casino band or the cantina band.
Yeah, Figger and Dan in the modal notes.
But that kind of works because Lando is a gambling con man. He like having that kind of swagger in your movie would work for this. Yeah.
I also love Greg's idea of like you thread in like a major part of Star Wars, like there's a big epic narrative happening in the background that we just never get to see firsthand, but like is constantly like if you watch the background of all these scenes, you get to see like a major turning point of like I'm thinking of something like in the sequel trilogy where the First Order is there, and you're like, wait, how did the Empire like turn into the First Order? Where did they come from? What's the story behind that? And we get to see the story of that play out entirely in the background.
Yeah, it's like Maz Kanata's there with Luke's lightsaber, just like cutting people down or whatever, and he's just walking by it.
He's just trying to steal a hover bike in this scene.
And Lando would be hyper focused on his own drama and not paying attention to the larger epic space opera that's happening just behind him.
That's very good.
There's my Lando Calrissian movie, guys.
I love it.
I think as I recall, I think you might have pitched at least part of this at the when we did Han Solo.
Yeah, I think the germs of this started when we talked Solo.
You know what? It's possible because this one's been rattling around in my brain for a while.
It's still good. It's still a good pitch.
It's okay. I have another pitch for later.
Speaking of later, let's hear from our friends at the Alberta Podcast Network, and when we come back, we'll bang them off a little more rapid fire. Some of our pitches and some of your pitches. Thanks for all the listeners that added them.
This episode of I Have Some Notes is brought to you by the Northwest Fest International Documentary Festival, running in cinema from May 6th to the 14th and online from May 5th to 15th. NWF is thrilled to finally be able to bring the festival back to Metro Cinema this year with an outstanding lineup of some of the year's best docs and a few fun surprises. This year's festival is a hybrid affair with over 20 films screening at Metro Cinema, including the acclaimed Nick Cave music doc, This Much I Know to Be True, along with dozens of feature and short films screening online. Award-winning filmmaker Alexandra O'Philippe will also be in town to present his filmmaking masterclass. This event will be open to the public and is an absolute must for anyone who's ever dreamed of making their own film. Check out the full Northwest Fest film lineup and purchase all-access passes or single tickets at northwestfest.ca. Is This For Real is a podcast about various facets of Black life in Edmonton. In the first season of the show, Breaking the Blue Wall, host Omar Salafu explores anti-Black racism in policing and tells stories about policing in schools, accountability in Alberta's policing system, and the impacts of police violence on Black Edmontonians. You can listen to the podcast and read more about each episode at isthisforreal.ca. You can also support the work of these podcasters and future seasons on Patreon.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We're doing a side notes where we're pitching each other movies. This has been good times. Very jubilant. This is a jubilant episode.
If we're going to do some rapid fire pitches, I say we go right back to the top of the order to our guest Robyn to start us off.
Oh boy, get ready for more licensed properties that I will never be given permission. So this one was initially going to be my big pitch, and then I'm like, I don't know if I have enough of a unique angle on this, so I'll put it in my rapid fire part. But essentially, we all know they're going to do an MCU X-Men movie. The X-Men are my favorite superheroes in my favorite comic series, and the only ones I really care about. And I know they're going to do it, and they're going to do it differently than how I would want them to. So before they do whatever they're going to do, and it might be good, it might be bad, I want to just like get it on record of like, this is what I would do if you handed it over to me, which you will never do. Basic Cliff's Notes is I really loved what they did bringing Spider-Man into the MCU, in that they just like, I remember reading an interview with the directors where they said like, if we're doing another Spider-Man movie this close to all those other Spider-Man movies, we're going to make a big list of everything we've already seen, and none of that is allowed in our Spider-Man movie. Like, we're not showing Uncle Ben dying, we're not showing him get bit by the spider, we're not, like, all of that is out, and we're only going to see new ideas in the Spider-Man movie. And I think you take the exact same approach with the X-Men. My pitch, Marvel kind of overdoes this whole thing of like, oh, there's been secret characters in the background this whole time. They kind of did it with Wakanda, and they did it with the Eternals, and I feel like there are other examples you can point to where it's like, oh, this was always going on. So I hate to suggest it again here, but I think it's really the only way to give it a sense of like history. I feel like when you start the X-Men at the beginning, it's actually kind of boring for a while. The fun part is when they've been around for several decades of this mutant human conflict, and like you get to a sense that there's this grand opera going on that has been going on for a while now. And I think that fits because you've also had about 1 million X-Men movies already. So to kind of kill two birds with one stone, you make it, mutants have existed for a while, but it's been very secret. The Xavier's school has been kind of like, rounding them up with Cerebro and keeping them under wraps because they know that humanity would hate and fear them. And all of our existing X-Men characters that we have seen in every movie, Professor X, Magneto, Cyclops, Wolverine, they're gone. It's not that they aren't in this movie because they don't exist yet, or they haven't, like, they are historical figures in this movie that are not currently present at the school. Maybe they're dead, maybe they've given up they've retired, maybe it's mysterious what happened to them, but like, we're starting with a new batch of mutants that we haven't seen. Emma Frost runs the school at this point because she's fantastic and the best character, and I wanna see her done right and not mailed in performance by January Jones cashing a check. I would love to see a proper take on that character. I think every X-Men movie has done, like, we've seen a lot of POV characters that are trying to do Kitty Pryde from the comics. They kind of did it with Rogue in the first movie, and they've done it with Jubilee in the cartoons. And I feel like you just do Kitty Pryde. She's due for like a good not being a side character. But yeah, that generation of like, we don't get the ones we've seen 1 million times. We get some of the ones we've seen once or twice. Maybe we get a good take on Nightcrawler. We get a Colossus in there. I feel like rather than, you can also have some stand-ins for your existing characters. You don't have Magneto, but you have his daughter Polaris, who has like the same power set and kind of fills the Magneto role. You don't have
Wolverine, but X-23.
X-23 is there. You have your archetypes, but you've also like, you're doing a different spin on it. And as for the plot, I think you do the Genosha arc from the comics, which is essentially there's like a utopian island that turns out to be enslaving and subjugating mutants in kind of it's sometimes a clumsy apartheid metaphor. But in this, I like the idea that like the big conflict revolves around like, do we reveal ourselves to the world? Like the stakes are, if, can we do this but still stay in secret? And ultimately the aftermath of the movie is that the world now knows about mutants. And I feel like for your villain, got Mr. Sinister. They haven't done him yet. They're doing some really fun stuff with him in the comics, making him just really flamboyant and over the top. So I want to see a good big screen Mr. Sinister.
He's also never been on the big screen. Yeah. At risk of making this pitch longer.
Yeah. I gotta stop because
I like the idea that the mutants might be talking about revealing themselves now because of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff that's been going. Like, people have met Thor at the store. Like, the world will accept us now. And then there's that conflict between the old guard mutants who are like, no, the world will never accept us, and this new batch of mutants who are like, no, like, Superheroes are on the news every day. We can do this now. It's safe to do this now.
And you can explore some of that, like, they've always been a metaphor for, minorities, whether it's a racial minority or a sexual minority or what have you. And you can explore some of that of, like, the stage we're in currently, where the world is very accepting to a point, but also still draws weird lines and is like, well, trans people, absolutely not. And it's like, how are you on board with gay marriage but not trans rights kind of thing? Could be an interesting dichotomy between, like, the Avengers are fine but the X-Men are not okay. What the fuck?
That works, actually. I like that.
And I think that the Cerebro is a great justification for how they've kept hidden, is that, like, Professor X has just been bringing them in secretly, is a great way it's the bubble around Wakanda, it's the we're done now part of the Eternals.
Part of the backlash against them could also be the learning that Professor X was using Cerebro to basically brainwash the rest of humanity to not notice the mutants.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
And he was doing it for perfectly altruistic reasons, but how does that look to a bunch of normies? Yeah. You were brainwashing us all to not notice these people who are living among us? That's terrifying. You can see why that would cause a backlash, right?
Yeah. Oh, all the best X-Men stories have Professor Xavier, like, being really morally gray and overstepping, and everyone else being like, holy shit, maybe don't. So I love that. It's a great angle.
Cool.
I've overstayed my time on the short bit, so someone else go.
What do you got?
I've always wondered what Ranma One Half would look like as a live action movie.
Round the One Half?
Ranma One Half. This is a 80s and 90s manga series that was turned into an anime
by the same person
around the same time, by Rumiko Takahashi. Yeah. It's the story of the Saotome and Tendo family, who the Saotome son Ranma and the Tendo daughter Akane have been arranged to marry. The twist is that Ranma has in his martial arts training fallen into a cursed spring. And when he's doused with cold water, he turns into a woman. When he's doused with hot water, he turns back into a man. So I guess that's like my question would be, like, would something like this be an interesting way to explore gender in a modern context? Because Ranma is very much like in the 80s version of this a chauvinist and kind of a misogynist.
He was brought up with the understanding that he needed to be a real man. So the fact that he spends 50% of his time as a woman is actually a huge part of his character arc.
Yeah. And Rumiko Takahashi said that, like, she was never really trying to say anything about gender with the comic, but interestingly, as the show progressed, like, Ranma becomes more and more comfortable with his woman's side. So, like, there would be really, like, an interesting way of exploring gender through that. But, like, the cartoon itself is sort of like, it can be pretty misogynistic at times and stuff like that, because it is
very slapstick.
The 80s, yeah. But also very funny in a lot of places and really wacky.
Yeah, I wonder if that sort of falls into the same trap that, like, Why the Last Man, the criticisms, the valid criticisms it's levied, where, like, when that book came out, it was kind of a cool premise, and then now we're making a show of it in 2022, and some people are like, that's not the cool progressive premise you think it is. And I wonder if maybe this might be in that vein. I don't know. I don't know enough to say, but I feel like it might be the sort of thing that, like, it's either very much a great, like, now is the time to strike on this, or it's, like, definitely a stale concept shouldn't be touched with a 10-foot
It could definitely be a product of its time. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I love when an author is like, oh, I was never trying to say anything with this, or an artist of any kind, because it's always just like, well, maybe not, but you did. Like, you can't help but, like, put your own experience into your work, and it's like hearing Tolkien talk about it. It's like, it's not an allegory for anything, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like, you had a lot of lived experience that I think made its way in here, whether that was your intent or not.
It's interesting because you look at some sort of like older films, or like, and remaking them based on the social issue they're trying to tackle, and like, some of us are sort of like, I don't want to say ahead of our time on, but we're more on like the cutting edge of social progression than maybe other people are. And you wonder if like something like this would be like a movie that could talk to the people who aren't quite there yet. You know what I mean? Because like there's still a voice for that, because like I was watching like clips from a comedian today who was just like still doing like all these like foreign accents and stuff like that, and we're like, are we really still doing this? But like, he was a famous guy, and he's got lots of specials, so no one's telling him not to do it. So like there's for people like us who are like maybe a little bit more forward thinking, there's still a lot of folks who are not necessarily there yet on certain social issues.
And there's definitely a danger of like progressives making art for other progressives, and everyone forgetting to like, oh, we actually have to speak to everyone who's not here. Like, we can't just make art that pats ourselves on the back for our own progressive views. So something like this could be a good way to actually spread a message, as opposed to just being like, appreciate that I have the same progressive take that you do. Aren't we all so great in our bubble? Yeah.
Well, you think about that, but like that's like a lot of people on the sort of more conservative side of things do feel like they're being talked down to by a lot of movies, and maybe that's part of the reason why. It's just like they're maybe like they feel like they're trying to play catch up or something like that, and it's frustrating when things like, are happening faster
like
than what
obviously tone to
it. Exactly, right? Yeah.
Don't you get it? Everyone's equal, you idiot.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to know, because I quickly Google image searched Ranma one half when you started talking about this, because I'm not familiar with it at all, and every image has a big panda in it, along with his characters.
Yeah, his dad fell into that's the real comedy of the whole series, is like everyone keeps following Ranma through his journey, and they all end up at this Jusenkyo, which is like the cursed spring training ground, and they all keep falling into these so there's like a guy who turns into a goose, there's a woman who turns into a cat, there's a boy who turns into a tiny little piglet. It's great.
As you were explaining the pitch,
and they form the Animorphs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought for sure you were going to say he turned into a panda, but it's his dad.
I think it might actually be free to watch on. It's either Prime or Tubi. I can't remember which one I looked it up on, but you can actually the one of those two. It's on. You can watch the like 3 seasons worth of it if you're ever interested in it.
Oh, dang!
Cool. Well, I have a pitch that also, traffics in discussions of gender. Obviously, us 4 white men are definitely the people to be bringing this conversation to the table. But and also now I'm thinking is what I'm about to pitch very much what Robyn was saying of like, hey, let's be a bunch of progressive people and pat ourselves on the back for being so smart and clever and agree. But fuck it, I think it's a great idea anyway. So I actually know Greg, because we played a lot of the game Overwatch together. That's how we met. And Overwatch started an esports league about 4 or 5 years ago. Made a big to-do about it. Teams in every city. There's a whole thing. Like there's a Vancouver and a Toronto Overwatch team. And I was very interested in this endeavor. And I look at the rosters, and it's all dudes. It's a whole esports league of dudes. And I'm like, in video games, really? Like, it barely makes sense to have, like, only men in, like, the NHL. Yeah. But to have an esports league that's all, like, not even 95% men, 98%, every player was a dude. And so I'm like, that's absurd. And I just got the idea to have a underdog feel-good sports movie about an all-female, or at least non-male, esports team. The working title is A League of Legends of Their Own.
You built into that punchline the whole time, and I love it.
And yeah, I mean, it's literally, it's just all the beats of a sports movie, but it's about a bunch of women, non-binary people, trying to enter the competitive world of esports and having to deal with all of the challenges that an underdog team in a sports movie faces, and all of the challenges women have on the internet and in gaming and in the gaming world. Because, oh boy, video games, not a great place for women, unfortunately.
I was gonna ask, do you know with the league in real life, is it a mandate that this is a men's league, or is it just because it's so toxic that no women are?
I don't know, but I have to believe it's just coincidental, or a marketing thing. Because that was the other thing is there's teams. The teams are named for cities, but they're actually owned by weird rich guys, like other sports teams. So I'm a weird rich guy from London, so I own the London Overwatch team. And I bought the 8 best Korean kids and 1 white kid with a mohawk to be my team. Or existing esports teams. They just sort of bought them up, guys who were in the minors bought those teams and made them esports.
And I think they all just live in California, right?
Yeah, I mean, they all live in... The show is shot in California. During the season, they all live in California. No one's flying to Beijing to play a game. But
that's hilarious, the concept of, a regional sports team for an esports league, because it's not only do they... that's already a kind of a laughable thing in real, physical sports of, oh, it's the Edmonton team, but the people can be drafted from wherever, and they just move to Edmonton.
Yeah, half of them are from Czech Republic. Yeah.
And but in esports, you don't even have to move to the city. It's all online. You can never leave California. They're I play for the London whatevers. I don't know. I play for whoever pays me.
Yeah, at least with sports teams, they actually subsist in your city, and they're kicking around there, and you can you've got stores and things like that to go in that are all about their team. But when it comes to these esports, it has nothing to do with Toronto at all.
Other than some weird millionaire from Toronto bought a existing team of esports competitors,
that's so
and introduced them into the league. So anyway, I figured do the movie about the all female either Overwatch or League of Legends team. So
love it.
Yeah. Scott, what do you got?
So it's funny that you mentioned Death of Stalin during the first half of this podcast, because that's kind of where my pitch is going. Preface, I just finished listening to Robert Evans do an epic 6-part Behind the Bastard series on Henry Kissinger. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, I went, I very badly want Armando Iannucci to do a Watergate movie.
Oh.
Watergate by the guy who did Veep, Death of Stalin, and In the Loop.
Yeah.
Perfect. He would perfectly capture the nonsense and the pettiness and the just unbelievable craziness that was going on in Nixon's White House while his presidency was circling the drain. And I want him to make that movie so bad now. Because even just hearing, and I highly recommend, if you're even vaguely interested in Nixon's White House, go listen to the Behind the Bastard series on Henry Kissinger, because some of the stuff they discuss is insane and hilarious and terrifying in equal measure. And I can think of no better director to capture that moment in history with perfect lucidity, the way that he did with the palace intrigue after Stalin died, than Armando Iannucci. So I want him to make the Watergate movie, because I think only he can do it right.
Oh man, but if you put out a casting call asking for anyone who thinks they can do a Richard Nixon impression, how are you going to sift through that'll break the universe. That's everybody. That's all the actors that there are.
Well, okay, hang on. I don't know why this is where my brain went, but I'm who I would no, okay, I can't stop now. But I was what about Michael Richards?
Oh my god.
I don't want to give him a job, but I just feel it'd be just to see him that sweaty and shaky.
Yeah. It could be from what I've heard, he's feels bad about the whole thing in the comic book.
It could be his redemption arc. Yeah.
People talk about him as one of the guys who who learned from it and was oh, I don't get to do that anymore. my fame is over. I'm out. Maybe this is comeback.
Yeah.
I don't think we get to decide when he's served his time.
It's not us.
No.
But what we can decide is to give Armando Iannucci millions of dollars to make a movie about the Watergate scandal from the perspective of Nixon's White House.
Love it.
Yeah.
I've got another quick one. Do we have any other ones before we do our listener suggestions?
Nope.
Great. Okay, there's one last one. Is my only one that isn't a wholly original idea. I want to also reboot an old property. It's 2022. The people are clamoring for it. We need it. I have a fresh take on the Beverly Hillbillies.
Here for it. Hit me.
So here's my premise for a Beverly Hillbillies reboot. I know it's supposed to be a movie pitch, but I think it makes better as a series. Would make a better series. So Jed Clampett, he's retired, he's washed up, he's broke. He is a former, he's not a mountaineer, he's not like shooting squirrels to feed his family. But he is out of work because the work has dried up, as is what is now, happening in America. He used to clean up orphan wells, and even the orphan well cleanup industry has dried up. So it's not oil. He doesn't strike oil. He finds out that he is the last living rights holder to a weird old comic book character that Hollywood wants to make a movie out of. And so he has to pack up his family and move to Beverly Hills, that is. And then hilarity ensues. And so it's, instead of them striking oil, they strike a valuable intellectual property. And we explore the world of needless reboots and rehashed ideas. The idea of brands and IP and copyright as a resource like oil. Like, how much can we wring from this old well? How much can we wring from Animorphs?
Can I escalate this slightly?
Yes.
What if it's not superhero that he has the rights, the intellectual property that he has the rights to? This is a guy who is a descendant of he's washed up and living out in the middle of nowhere, and he's a real hillbilly now, but he's a descendant of whoever owned the rights to the TV show The Beverly Hillbillies. And it is both a Beverly Hillbillies story, but it's also about like the meta narratives. They're trying to reboot the Beverly Hillbillies in this Beverly Hillbillies movie.
That's a great angle too. Yeah,
I think they already did this with Bewitched. I never watched it, but I'm pretty sure that's how they did the Bewitched movie.
I think you're right. I think that is the premise of Bewitched.
It's clever.
The guy who is going to reboot Bewitched marries a witch.
Yes, yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up the Beverly Hillbillies thing, because somebody pointed out on social media, and I put myself on the spot, so I absolutely cannot cite who said this, and I'm not trying to take credit for it, that it dawned on them that Schitt's Creek is the negative of Beverly Hillbillies, because it's a rich family that strikes it poor and has to move to the sticks.
It's written in my notes. I had made the same observation because I was describing Beverly Hillbillies to my partner Amanda, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of like a reverse Green Acres, which is really just Schitt's Creek before Schitt's Creek was Schitt's Creek, was Green Acres.
Weird, yeah.
But yeah, there's all that. And the only other wrinkles I want to add is, if it's a series, there's time to explore things. So I think the kids, if they're living in Hollywood, because he's got kids and a wife, they get into like social media influencing. Maybe one of them gets into crypto, which is also a weird like investment. Like, I struck big like Pa. I bought these NFTs. And just that general like the commodification of like personality and ideas instead of actual functional resources like oil. So
I love that.
Yeah,
solid premise.
There you go. But I like that it ties back on itself, and it's time to reboot the Beverly Hillbillies, and he strikes gold. And
I hadn't noticed the Schitt's Creek, Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres trifecta. Like, we love stories of class mobility. It can be upwards or downwards. Yeah. It doesn't matter. We like seeing people move from one social class to another social class.
Yeah, princes and or paupers. Cool. Well, that's been our pitches, but our listeners had some of their own. Just like when we do the episodes, we want your notes for the movies. You hit us with your pitches, and you did not disappoint. So let's get into them. Tack pitches a black and white detective noir with an entirely era-appropriate cast of CG actors. We know it'll happen eventually, he says in brackets. Maybe a sequel to The Maltese Falcon.
This is my nightmare. I hate this so much.
I'm simultaneously, I like this idea and I'm horrified by this idea. And Tack is absolutely right. It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like it's a solid pitch and a cogent observation, but also this is like every goddamn Luke Skywalker scene in the new Star Wars shows where I hear people talking online about like, oh yeah, it's really good. It's cool to see young Luke back. And I'm like, how can you watch it and not just be shaking in existential dread? I hate it. At the implications of what this means for like, Hollywood owning your soul and your likeness for all eternity. I hate it so much. But good pitch.
I mean, I'll take a Peter Cushing in Rogue One before watching a Tupac hologram. Like going to a concert to see Tupac's hologram, it seems much more insane to me than just like we animated Humphrey Bogart. Like
I don't know, they both freak me out in different ways, but fair.
Yeah. Like, it brings up so much to, like, in an era where we're concerned about, like, consent and stuff like that, to be just, like, posthumously just, like, putting people in things just and, like,
puppeting your digital corpse. Yeah, like, oh my god, I hate it so much. Yeah.
Like that Dane Cook bit about Bob Barker being on a string.
Yeah. Yeah. It's literally that, yeah. Anyway, good pitch.
Good pitch, Tack. Tack has the second one. See if they go 2 for 2. Or a Riddler movie. Not the Riddler from the capital T, the Batman, but a new vigilante is brutally over-policing, so a reformed Edward Nygma must return to his green jumpsuit to stop this supposed hero.
Oh, that's a fun reversal.
Yeah, I do like that.
I have a long, simmering comic book pitch for the Riddler ongoing series where he basically becomes Sherlock Holmes in Gotham City. Like, he becomes a private detective, which I would love to do, and it will never happen. Another thing they will never let me anywhere near. But that kind of lines up with that, so I like it, Tack.
What I like about that is that potentially has the Riddler trying to solve crimes by coming up with riddles for the crime that he's solving.
Yeah, that's it. Like, how do his riddles play in at that point if he's not the one leaving the cryptic clues? Yeah.
Because he's good at solving cryptic clues. So he's good at solving complicated mysteries like Sherlock Holmes. And he's motivated by wanting to prove that he's a better detective than Batman so that he can prove, ultimately, he's better than Batman. Just from the other angle. He's not. Yeah. He can't out-villain Batman, so he's going to try to out-detective Batman.
In this pitch of him being, like, taking down the vigilante, like, does he give him an out of like, all right, I'll give you a riddle, and if you can solve it, then I'm backing off. But if you can't crack my riddle, then I'm taking you down.
I like the idea that he's just cleverer than the vigilante, and he's trying to lure the vigilante to his doom.
That's pretty good.
Munzie comments, a heist movie that takes place in some manner of a D&D style high fantasy setting. And then in quotes, "Get in, we're gonna go rob a wizard."
I actually had a similar idea, which I'd been rattling around in my brain. Not a heist movie, but mine was a detective story in a D&D world, where you've got.
I like a heist because the whole point of a dungeon is that you're going to try to find like the lost sword of such and such.
Oh, for sure. Every Gary Gygax dungeon crawl is a heist movie. Like,
yeah.
You could make a movie of the Tomb of Annihilation and call it a heist movie, like a very deadly heist.
Is this our second Guy Ritchie pitch of the night?
Show me the Guy Ritchie Dungeons and Dragons movie and watch. Oh my god, I didn't know I wanted that till those words came out of my mouth. I'm gonna go watch Snatch later. Darth Willem says, an archaeologist finds an entrance to a forgotten city from some ancient civilization. They go through it, only to find that the entrance has vanished behind them. Endeavoring to go deeper into the tunnel, he finds that as he goes deeper, things get stranger and more supernatural, might make for an interesting found footage film. Of all of that, I like the last bit there, Darth.
You know, this actually kind of sounds a little bit like As Above, So Below.
Is that the Paris Catacombs movie?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking
too.
Also, I was thinking about it. It's a great movie. I love it. I was thinking about how this is sort of unrelated to this pitch, but how you would do like a modernized take on Indiana Jones, like what that character would look like in sort of like a 2022 setting. Like I guess he looks more like like an Uncharted movie. But like, is there a way to either take out the colonizer aspect of it, or to like do it in a way that sort of like subverts the colonizer?
You cannot dig in a tomb without having a colonizer aspect of it.
That's kind of like what I was thinking.
But if it was, I just like the idea of a found footage action movie. Like there are often horror movies, but to do one as an action movie, like this documentary crew goes to some ancient tomb and suddenly we're watching them pull Indiana Jones stunts from a handy cam because they're still trying to document their completely earnest, like, archaeological dig that has boulders falling on them. None of them are planning to dodge boulders. They just wanted to dust some rocks. And then found footage action tomb film.
And it does kind of take care of your colonial aspect because they're trapped there. They go through a magic door. So it's like, oh, we're not here to raid any, like we were just trying to do a dig and now we're stuck and we have to battle our way out of this temple.
Ian Runkle says, John Wick crossed with My Fair Lady. Two guys having a dispute about whether being a great assassin is nature over nurture and end up with a bet where one of them takes on a protege.
That's good. I have no additions to that. This is a good pitch.
Friend of the show, Olav Rockney, says, a movie called Fly by Night. By day, she's a corporate lawyer, but by night, she fights crime as a fly.
She is the fly. Now, does she turn into an actual fly, or is she like Spider-Man? She has fly-like powers.
Yeah, fly fiend.
I guess my question for Olav, and I obviously could just text him, but is like the idea that something's fly by night, like, oh, that's a real fly by night operation. I always just assumed any kind of like, guy selling stereos out of the back of the car, kind of like, this place is, ghost kitchen vibe. But is fly by night specifically for a legal, like for a lawyer? Is a fly by night lawyer?
I think he's just making a play on words there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think
He said it's a sequel to The Fly, but not the remake. He said it's the sequel to the 1958 one set in Montreal.
Okay.
So, okay, this actually turns it around then. Is she also a fly while she's being a lawyer?
I've never seen the original Fly, so I can't answer that question. But I love that an Olav pitch comes with homework, so I'm on board.
And finally, John Frankie Kennedy commented, remake 7, but, for kids.
Yeah.
The 7 animated feature.
Yeah. Anything under the premise of Muppet Babies is very funny to me. Like, it works. Blank, but Muppet Babies.
I was trying to come up with that meme of like, remake a movie with the Muppets and you keep one human actor for 7 and like Morgan Freeman, I guess. I don't know who you keep in that.
Honestly, I know. I hate to say this.
What's in the box? What's in the box?
Here's the thing, and I realize I'm saying it, but you keep Kevin Spacey.
I was going to say, that's who I know you don't keep. Oh boy!
You actually that voice, Liam, sounded like Raymond from Everybody Loves Raymond, which also would be hilarious if you replace Brad Pitt
with Ray Romano.
Deborah, your head's in the box.
Spoiler alert for 7, by the way.
I want to sneak this in right before we end because I had not a fourth one, but I need it said because it kind of chapped my ass. I've had another pitch for something that this year Netflix made.
Oh, no
go
way.
watch it on Netflix, and they did it better. There's an animated show on Netflix called Inside Job, where it's like a workplace comedy about the secret world government.
Yeah.
So all the conspiracies and things are true, and there's one organization that runs it all, and that's the workplace setting for this workplace comedy. I've had that pitch for years. I think they did it better than I probably ever would have done. They had some stuff, some layers to it I hadn't considered. So like a tepid recommendation for Inside Job.
That's my experience. Whenever I have a good idea, someone else also had it and executed on it better than I would have ever done it, and that's just heartbreaking for me. But also, like, at the very least, it shows that I had a good idea, right? Like,
yeah. Speaking of good ideas, you should listen to the podcasts that Robyn and I make together. You already listened to this one, so I don't have to convince you. But
you're already at your computer. You're already listening to stuff.
You're there. So here's my pitch for you. Listen to Robyn tell us about the show that we are on the Alberta Podcast Network, Quantum Kickflip.
Yeah, you heard my pitch for a coming-of-age YA novel taken to the extreme and explored in middle age. If you want to see how I'd handle like a straightforward YA coming-of-age story, I have a podcast where we do exactly that. We play the game Slug Blaster, which is a tabletop RPG all about dimension-hopping teens getting up into shenanigans in parallel realities and learning about life and love and themselves. But mostly it's a big, fun, wacky time where we get to shoot ray guns and blow up slugs. It's great. We're almost at our season finale. So now is like the absolute perfect time. If you were waiting for your excuse of like, when should I check out Quantum Kickflip and listen to it and get caught up? Now's the time, because then you can be there for the finale and catch that in real time and see how it all ends. I'm so thrilled. We've been doing some really cool stuff on the show. The story is getting... I finally get to reveal all of my machinations, and it's been so much fun. So, highly recommend it. QuantumKickflip.com or, hey, Alberta Podcast Network.
And while you're searching those things out, search us on social media. We are at I Have Some Notes on Twitter and at I Have Some Notes Pod on Instagram. You can look us up on Facebook, too, if you want. Of course, wherever it is you're interacting with us, even on your podcast app, give us a review, a like, a subscribe. Whatever little weird star the app wants you to click it, please.
Hey, if you like original stories, you might like Makeshift Stories, which is a bi-weekly journey into the improbable. It includes speculative fiction, sci-fi, and fantasy for all ages, created by Alan V. Hare. You can check out that podcast and more right now at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this podcast fixing a lot of movies, and the next episode will be our 100th movie that we will have fixed, and we will be welcoming back our original host of the podcast, Colin McIntyre, for Batman 1989.
Perfect film. No notes, but I'm sure you'll have some.
Absolutely, and until then, I've been your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies!